Hello everyone, this is DieselD199 speaking, and this is the first in a series of videos in which I will answer the questions submitted to me on my Q&A announcement video. Before I turned off commenting on that video, I received a total of 155 comments, many of which contained several questions. I also received some questions on Facebook and Twitter, and I intend to answer all of them. To do this, I have merged similar questions together and then divided all 105 of them up into different categories. Over the course of the next few weeks, I will answer 1 to 3 categories in different videos. To make it interesting, I will be including some video and images where appropriate. Some of the video has never been seen on YouTube before. In addition, I'll also be asking you questions regarding the future of my series, because your opinion matters. So let's get things started. In this video, I will be answering all of your questions regarding the official Thomas & Friends series. The first question comes from Trainboy7 and Brandon Prokop. Which episode of Thomas & Friends did you see first? Well, that's a really difficult question to answer. I don't remember. I was very young when I first started watching Thomas & Friends, but I suspect it was probably an episode from season 3. That's the season that really stands out in my mind, and episodes like Thomas and the Chinese Dragon, A Scarf for Percy, Trust Thomas, and The Trouble with Mud really come to mind when I think back all those years to when I first started watching Thomas & Friends. Alright, the next question comes from quite a few different users. Which season of Thomas & Friends is your favourite? Which is your least favourite? Well, that's quite a difficult question to answer. I would say that my favourite season is probably season 5. I really enjoyed that season. It was a bit darker than earlier seasons, and it didn't have any Railway series stories in it. But the stories it did have were very good. They were very well written. There was lots of action and drama, and it really brought the show to life in a way that it never had been before, and I don't think it ever has been since. I mean, I really like all the spooky type episodes that are in that season. Duncan gets spooked, and Toby's discovery, Haunted Henry. It really is a fantastic season to watch, and one that I really enjoy watching today even. In terms of my least favorite season, it's really hard to pinpoint one. I do, however, know that my least favorite seasons are seasons 13 to 16. These, to me, are the worst that have ever been created. And the reason I can't pick any one of them is because there isn't any difference between them. When you think about it, when you think about seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, even seasons 8, 9, and 10, each one of these seasons was distinct in its writing style, the sets, the characters, the lighting. You could tell which season an episode came from, even if you hadn't seen that episode before. Seasons 13, 14, 15, and 16, they just blend together. They had the most boring writing of any of the seasons. It was very, very, if you'd seen one episode, you'd seen them all, basically. The same plot every single time. And it wasn't so much to do with the fact that they were CGI, but it was more to do with the fact that they were CGI and they didn't take advantage of being CGI, which is something that I'll discuss a little later in another question. PokeBrick02 said, which era of Thomas & Friends is your favorite? Well, I think you know which era of Thomas & Friends is my least favorite. I'm not exactly sure how you would, say, divide up the eras, but my favorite era, I would say, is what I would regard as the classic era. So seasons 1 to 5. Those are the best seasons. I think everyone is in agreement with that. And we really haven't seen anything come all that close to being the kind of quality that those first 5 seasons were recently, or even seasons 6 and 7 were not as good as them. So my favorite era of Thomas and Friends is what I would regard to be the classic era. This was a popular question. Which episode of Thomas and Friends is your favorite? Which is your least favorite? Both of those questions are really difficult to answer, but I'm going to have to say that my favorite episode, and I did have to think about it for a while, is probably Haunted Henry. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Halloween is definitely my favorite holiday, and I really do enjoy that kind of spooky atmosphere, and Haunted Henry nailed this. It was just such a great episode. It had drama, it had all... it had a really good story and some really good dialogue, and there was mystery, and it was, the sets were beautiful, all covered in fog, and I really do think it's one of the best episodes, or I think it is the best episode, although it's hard to say, really. There are so many other good episodes, though. Dirty Objects is one of my favorite episodes. You can take most episodes from seasons 1 to 5, and I probably like it. A Better View for Gordon also comes to mind. Escape is a really great episode as well. Ghost Train is another episode that I like from season 2. It's difficult to make a decision, but I'm going to have to go with Haunted Henry. As for my least favorite episode, well, it's impossible to say, really. There are just so many terrible episodes from the CGI series in particular, so I can't pick any one, but I can guarantee you that it would be one from seasons 13, 14, 15, or 16. So I think this was probably the most popular question. Who is your favorite Thomas and Friends character, and why? Again, this is a difficult question to answer. I'm gonna have to say that my favorite Thomas and Friends character out of all of them is probably Duncan. I love Duncan's attitude, I love his theme song, I love his everything about him. He's funny, he's really funny as a character. At least he was in seasons 4 and 5. I don't think he's as much of a rebel in the later seasons, but definitely Duncan would have to be number 1. Other characters that I really like James. Again, I love his attitude, I love his theme song, I love his make, I love his model, I love his bright red paint, I even like his whistle. My favorite Diesel would be DieselD199's. Even though he came from Thomas and the Magic Railroad, he's a really cool character. He's got a very unoriginal name, but Pinchy just makes all the difference. And he's a great character, and he's my favorite Diesel. This question was asked by Mike D57's. Which character do you think should return? So we've been fortunate to see a number of different characters return to the series lately, thanks no doubt to Andrew Brenner, the new head writer. I'd really like to see Duke return. He had, 4 episodes in which he had an actual speaking role in season 4, and, we haven't seen him since. And what makes him really interesting is that he is a tender engine on the narrow gauge railway. And, he's got an interesting character, and I think he's got a really nice model, too. So I would like to see Duke come back. I'd also like to see Daisy come back. I think maybe there's a few one-off characters, Dennis, Derek, come to mind, so that probably should get another episode where they can say at least one thing or another. So yeah, Duke is my main concern, but also characters like Daisy as well. What are your thoughts on the Andrew Brenner era so far and the new direction Thomas and Friends is heading in? Well, I'm very excited, I have to say that. I have never looked forward to seeing a season for a long time, but I was very excited to see season 17 and see what they would do differently. And I'm very impressed with the new writing style. It's not as good as the first 5 seasons yet, but you never know where it could go from here. I have high hopes, And I think that Andrew Brenner gets a lot of credit, and it's well deserved, but I also think that the new director, David Bass, deserves some credit. Before I mentioned that I felt that the first lot of CGI seasons hadn't taken advantage of the fact that they were CGI. Well, now Thomas and Friends really is starting to take advantage of this new format. The first 13, 14, 15, and 16 tried to copy the style of the original series. Season 17 has tried to change that up a bit, and we've seen some lovely big sweeping camera pans and all that sort of cool stuff that you would never be able to do with models. And so I think that David Bass deserves some credit too, but yeah, overall I'm very excited for the new direction that Thomas and Friends is heading in. Alright, the next question. Are you looking forward to Tale of the Brave and Season 18? What are your thoughts so far? Well, I haven't heard anything about Season 18 yet. I'm not sure what news there is. I mean, I've seen a picture of Henrietta with a face, which looks interesting. I've seen the trailer for Tale of the Brave. It looks interesting. It's got dinosaurs in it, so it's bound to be exciting. It also looks like it's got a few new pointless merchandising characters, but you know, you've got to expect that from Thomas and Friends. I'm not sure how much better this special will be than all the others, but it'll be interesting to see what it's like. So far, you know, I'm optimistic about Tale of the Brave, and I'm very excited to see if Season 18 can top Season 17. So, you know, yeah, I'm looking forward to both of them. Mike D57's asked, what is your opinion on the voice acting in the CGI Thomas and Friends series in both the UK and the US? I haven't heard too much of the US dubs. I've heard a few bits and pieces here and there. Overall, yeah, it's alright. It's not overly fantastic, but the voice actors tend to do a fairly good job. It does, I feel, extend the series. I do think it's an improvement over just having the narrator voice all of the characters, and I think it was definitely the right decision to make in order to rejuvenate the series, and so I'm fairly happy with most of the voices. There aren't too many that I think, oh, yuck, for, or anything like that. So yeah, I think the voice acting is quite good. Could be better, but it's fairly good. What is your opinion on Thomas and the Magic Railroad? Ooh, a controversial question. Or is it? I'm not sure what most people think. You can leave me a comment telling me what you think about Thomas and the Magic Railroad. I have read a few on Short 30, I think, but if you want to tell me what you think, then go ahead. When I was a kid, I didn't have so much of a problem with it. I mean, even then I knew it was a bad movie. But it had Thomas and Friends in it, so it was all right. I do remember I used to skip through all the scenes that weren't on the island of Sodor. And as someone who, you know, grew up on not having seen Shining Time Station, and I still haven't seen Shining Time Station, and someone asked me who my favorite Mr. Conductor is, well, Alec Baldwin's the only one I've ever really seen, so I think it was a disaster, and I think that Thomas and Friends really deserved better. I think that Britt Allcroft took the series in a direction that she really shouldn't have, although I do think the original script was better than the final cut, and I would like to see a director's cut if that is at all possible. You know, it made some big mistakes, and I think one of the biggest mistakes was that it wasn't a movie about Thomas. It was more about Lily and Mr. Conductor than it was any of the engines on the island of Sodor. And, you know, had they not cut P.T. Boomer, I think that the characters would have been pushed even further into the background. And really, if you're going to make a Thomas and Friends movie, it has to be about Thomas and his friends. And preferably his locomotive friends, not, you know, weird Americanized characters which have no relevance to the true spirit of the island of Sodor or Thomas and Friends. I mean, that also I think is a problem, that it was Americanized, okay? I realized that the film had to be international, but you know what? Thomas and Friends is based on the Railway series. Both of them are British, you know. The TV show and the Railway series are British. The island of Sodor, geographically, as defined by the Reverend W. Awdry, is a part of the United Kingdom. It is situated right near the United Kingdom. It should have been British with that respect, okay? They should have been using British terminology. They should not have been using these American whistles. I think that it was a very bad idea, and personally, I don't think they should have released it. I think they should have just said, well, we stuffed this up, maybe we'll try again later, but, because I do think it damaged the series. I think it damaged the credibility of the series, and unfortunately, I don't think it's ever been quite the same ever since. Are you looking forward to the World War II film? What are your thoughts so far? Well, at the moment, I'm not even sure if we're going to get that. I mean, they've postponed it several times. There were even rumors that the head writer said that they weren't going to do it anymore. So, I'd be happy for some sort of news about whether or not we're going to get it or not. A deadline, a specific deadline would be good. I mean, it's supposed to come out this year, isn't it? That was the last time I checked. It was supposed to come out in 2014, so it's already March. We haven't heard anything new, so I don't know. From what I've read, the basic premise, the storyline for it, is it's about a boy and his father, and it's during the Second World War, and they go to the island of Sodor, and they have some sort of bonding experience. Again, they're going to make the same problem that Thomas and the Magic Railroad made, okay? It's not a film about Thomas. It's going to be branded as a Thomas the Tank Engine film, but it's going to be about some random kid and his dad. And sure, that may be all well and good for the critics who want to see some human emotional story, but it's not good enough for the fans. I think what they really need to do is look at, say, Pixar films. Look at Pixar films. They don't predominantly have stories that are about people. Most of their films are not about people. In WALL-E, it was about a robot that didn't even speak. It's perfectly possible to do a film where Thomas is the main character, and I'm waiting for that to happen, and I don't think that this is going to be the case. On a brighter note, the teaser image that was released, that was made by Nitrogen Studios, looked very interesting. I mean, if we're going to get realistic-looking trains in this movie, I mean, I think that would make it worth it, even if the storyline is terrible, because I don't know about you, but I would love to see what a real Thomas the Tank Engine would look like. And unfortunately, Thomas's class, the LB and SCRE2 class with extended side tanks, I believe it is, all of those trains were scrapped, unfortunately. Kind of ironic. Thomas is the most famous locomotive in all the world, and his prototype doesn't exist anymore. I have personally been looking for the kind of material that I could use to make a realistic Thomas the Tank Engine model in the computer. I mean, you guys have all seen my animated video where the model was based on the television show. Well, I would like to make a realistic LB and SCR E2 class with extended side tanks and texture it and put a face on it, and so we can get some idea of what Thomas would look like in real life. Unfortunately, I need blueprints, I need measurements, I need actual figures. What's the diameter of the wheels? How long is the train? How high is the cab from the rails? How extended is the extended side tank? All that sort of stuff. I haven't been able to find all that much. All I can find is really some grainy images. If you have some decent images, if you can get hold of some of the original blueprints or some measurements or anything like that, please send it to me, inbox it to me. I know that there are some heritage railway museums in the United Kingdom that do have some of this material, so if someone in the UK can get their hands on it and send me copies, I will go out of my way and I will make a realistic looking Thomas the Tank Engine to the best of my ability. I will model that in the computer, and then we can all take a look and see what an actual realistic Thomas and Friends would look like. So if you've got any of that information and you want to see what a realistic Thomas and Friends would look like, a realistic Thomas the Tank Engine, I should say, then send me that information. But otherwise, some more info about the WW2 film would be helpful. Sotra Engine 4 asked, Which do you prefer, the Thomas and Friends television show or the Railway series? The TV show, to be blunt. The Railway series, I do enjoy. I do enjoy reading the stories. I love the artwork, and I love the fact that it was so heavily detailed, that so much thought went into the consistency of it. I love that you can, all of the locations in the Railway series are properly mapped. And you can look at a map of the island of Sodor, but ultimately, I fell in love with the TV show first. I never really read that much of the Railway series until later, and so, the TV show is number one in my heart, and I'd rather watch an episode, at least of the classic series, than I would read a story from the book. Briar Cisneros asked, who is your favorite narrator? I'm sorry, I probably butchered your name there. My favorite narrator is probably Michael Anglus. I grew up with his narration. He's the longest serving narrator, and I think he did a really good job. In the US version, George Carlin is definitely the best. Michael Brandon is all right. Alec Baldwin was terrible, in my opinion. I don't know how he got that job, or even why he sought it out. I suppose he was trying to do something different like George Carlin. Ringo Starr was all right, but he never gave all that much variation to the voices that he used. The current narrator, Mark, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. At first, I didn't realize that he had replaced Michael Anglus. I knew that there was something off when I was listening to some of season 17, but I didn't know for certain. So I think he's doing a fairly good job so far. Who have I missed? Pierce Brosnan. He was all right. His voice was a bit soft, I think. But yeah, my favorite narrator overall is definitely Michael Anglus. Mr. Oliver asks, what is your favorite funny saying from a Thomas and Friends character? Well, I don't have any favorite saying in that it's something repeated over and over and over again, like cinders and ashes or whatever, or bust my buffers or something like that. A lot of the things that were said regarding Duncan in season 4 to me seem to be the funniest. Whether it's, I'm a plain speaking engine, I speak as I find, tunnels should be tunnels and not rabbit holes. Keep your station, I'm staying right here. Probably my all-time favorite set of lines from Thomas and Friends is when the Fat Controller says to Duncan, tunnels are not dance floors and you are not a pop star. And then he says, as he looks at his funnel, if it happens again, I shall find ways to cut you down to size. In other words, your career is on the line. Need I say more? Which is, it's a great pun. It's very funny. So yeah, those would be my favorite funny sayings from Thomas and Friends. The Nebula XYZ asked, if you were to write a script for an actual Thomas and Friends episode, what would it be about? Well, in actual fact, I have written a few. I've written at least 3 from memory, and they're still sitting around on my hard drive. I was actually thinking quite recently about making one of them and turning it into a YouTube video. I'm not sure how popular that would be, though, so if you would like to see me make an actual Thomas and Friends episode, leave me a comment, and, I might do that. I'm not going to tell you what my scripts are about, because, I may use them in videos, but yeah, if you want to see me make an actual Thomas and Friends episode, just leave me a comment on the video. Ken Friedel asked, when did you get into Thomas and Friends? Well, I was very young. I think I must have been 2 or 3 probably when I first started watching the show, although I could have been even younger than that. Broadly speaking, I've been interested in Thomas and Friends for 3 different periods in my life. There was the time when I was very young, till about, I would say I was probably 7. And then after that, I took a break. Then I was interested in it again for about a year when I was about maybe 10 or 11. And then a couple years after that, I became interested in Thomas and Friends once again. and that's when I started making videos, and I've been keeping up with the show ever since. If you could pick a real locomotive to be a Thomas & Friends character, what would it be and what characteristics would it have? This was asked by Mr. HBK3051. Well, that's a really interesting question. I did think about this one, but I'd have to say, broadly speaking, I would pick an Australian locomotive. Okay, I am Australian. We've seen Japanese locomotives. We've seen American locomotives. Why not introduce an Australian locomotive? Australia produced a number of interesting looking steam locomotives. You could either go for something that looks really unique, or perhaps something that fits better in with the current style that's on Sodor. I mean, I have to say, Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand, Connor and Caitlin, these engines, they don't really fit in with the established locomotive style, and sometimes I find that off-putting, but I would pick an Australian locomotive. I'm not sure what characteristics it would have. Maybe green with gold stripes, perhaps. Those are Australia's sporting colours, but beyond that I'm not sure. But definitely an Australian locomotive. This is actually a really interesting question, and it comes from Wooden Railway 123. If the island of Sodor was real, where would you live and why? It's a really tough question. I mean, I always imagined as a kid what it would be like to live on the island of Sodor, and if I had billions of dollars, I would make my own island of Sodor. I have to say, I think I would probably want to live somewhere along the Little Western, along Duck and Oliver's branch line, by the coast. I may enjoy living somewhere along Thomas's branch line, or perhaps somewhere near the viaduct. I mean, that's a really cool piece of railway infrastructure, but yeah, probably somewhere along the Little Western, close to the sea. Track M fan Homer asked, do you think Trackmaster should make Millie? I do. I think there are a lot of engines that Trackmaster should make, Millie included, but more importantly, I'd like to see Daisy as a Trackmaster engine. I'd also like to see Playrail make Daisy, one of the two at least. Personally, I don't like the fact that there is now a difference between Trackmaster and Playrail models. I actually find it quite annoying because I've got to sit down and work out which one is the best. It's a shame they didn't just keep on going with the whole Tomy Playrail thing. In addition, I'd also like to see them keep characters in production. There's a number of characters, like for example, Billy, Bertram, which were, they've been discontinued. And I think that's really unfortunate because I'd like to get my hands on some of these characters without having to pay some ridiculous price for them. So yes, I do think they should make Millie. I think they should make a lot of other engines, Railway Series characters even. But I also think that they should keep characters in production always. Take and Play Thomas Stories asked, do you hate the Diesels? No, I don't hate the Diesels. Do I give you guys that impression? I'm not sure. I suppose there was the ongoing theme in which they were knocked off the rails and the like by Duck in my Tomica Thomas and Friends series. But no, I don't hate the Diesels. But I do prefer steam engines. I think most people do. Diesels do not now, nor will they ever have the charm of a steam engine. Each steam engine seems to me to be unique and have its own personality. I mean, how many of, Diesel, Arry, Burt, Paxton, Splatter, and Dodge, they're all the same class of diesel, But each steam engine is different. Each steam engine is unique in a way. And even though there were some classes which were more popular than others in the age of steam, steam engines were always experimental and they were never mass-produced in the way that diesel engines have been. So yeah, I don't hate the diesels, but I prefer steam engines. Riley asked, who do you like more, Duck or Oliver? Oliver, I'd have to say. I think he's a more interesting character. I prefer his shape. Duck's a bit odd looking, I have to say. But yeah, I prefer Duck. His episodes, which feature him, also tend to be more interesting, I find. Take and Play Thomas Stories asked, are you a true Thomas and Friends fan? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you mean, do I actually watch the show? Because if that's the case, then yes. I do actually watch the show. I don't just make my own parodies on the internet. I try to keep up with the Thomas and Friends news as best I can. Sometimes it's not always that easy to do. Broadcasting here in Australia can be a bit delayed at the best of times, although season 17 came out with due haste, so I was quite happy about that. And our final question for this particular video comes from Wobbuffet22. What would you do if Shattered Glass Astrotrain appeared on the official show? Well, admittedly, I had no idea what you were talking about until I went and looked it up. Turns out, I should say, that Astrotrain is from Transformers. And if a Transformer appeared on the actual show, I think I'd send Hit Entertainment an email and ask them what on earth they were doing with the show. Certainly would be interesting, but I can't say that I would endorse such a move. And that's it for this video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Join me next time as I answer your questions regarding my channel and my Tomica Thomas and Friends series. Thanks for watching, everyone.